Good evening and welcome to episode 6 of Coffee with Keith. My name is Amy Gruber and I'm Director of Enrollment Management at TASIS Portugal. And tonight we have as this very special guest, Mr. Fernando Gonzalez, who is the Chairman of the Board of Directors of TASIS Portugal. And I know Keith is very much looking forward to introducing Fernando to you tonight and to answering all your questions. As usual, please feel free to submit your questions using the question function at the bottom of the screen. At the second half of the webinar, I will curate the questions for Keith and Fernando to answer. So without further ado, I'll ask our producer / Director of Studies, Andrea, to send it over to Keith. Thank you, Andrea.
Coming to you from the studio in the heart of Sintra. Well, maybe not the heart, but the liver at least. Welcome to Coffee with Keith. Well, I got a haircut, and I'm not going to lie, it was great. Not necessarily the result, just being in close proximity to someone other than my wife over the last 6 weeks. That was gratifying. Even if she was holding scissors. My wife, that is. I'm going to brag a bit tonight versus past weeks when I bragged a lot. We've had a pretty good week. We've had a fantastic week in admissions. In fact, since we opened our office in December, we've had more than 180 applications for students to join us here, which is remarkable. In fact, we're considering adding another pre-kindergarten class because of demand. As well, if you've driven by in the last day or two, you'll see the windows are being cut in the exterior walls of the building, now visible from the road. And the interior rebuilding is taking place starting next week. Some of it's already commenced, but in a larger way next week. Our indoor gymnasium play area is nearly complete, and the climbing wall installation will happen in the next couple weeks. We've designed our outdoor learning classroom for the Early Learning Center and our outdoor gymnasium and playground. And so things are moving along very nicely with construction. And we were reminded again just today in our site meeting that everything remains on schedule. So we're very excited about that. And our board chair, who's in charge of the construction schedule and design, we'll talk about that shortly. We've even hired our school nurse, who's currently working in Ireland, but is Portuguese and excited to be returning home. However, I don't want to give people the idea that everything is normal, because it isn't. We are mired in a crisis, the likes of which we've not seen in our generation. If comparisons to world wars seem a bit far-fetched, at the very least, we're looking at a very highly unpredictable future. Concerns about whether our classrooms will be ready, we feel very confident about. However, the bigger concern for us is whether children will be allowed to return to any school in September. From all I've read and what we believe, we may be facing a situation where we're delivering learning in a different way next fall. We certainly hope not. That's not the plan. Nobody wants to open a new school in that fashion, but I want to assure everyone that if that is the case, we will be ready. Our faculty are very adept at delivering online learning. Many of them are leading that at their current schools, and most schools have their faculty return a few days before classes commence. We are having our faculty return 4 weeks, a full month before our classes begin, and we will be very well prepared to deliver in whichever format we are forced to. Hopefully, it'll be face-to-face and we'll get to see all of you shortly. Beyond that, I want to remind people we are committed to building the most beautiful school in the country. Our foundation board and our own board chairman, who you'll hear from shortly, will have it no other way. Not to mention, we already have the finest teachers, about whom you've heard a great deal from me over the last 6 weeks or so. So I want to make sure that everyone feels comfortable and confident that we are on track and that we are being fully transparent about the construction schedule and about our instructional aspirations, and certainly about the people we've hired. Okay, so with that said, I want to thank everyone for tuning in again to Coffee with Keith. This is week 6. I want to say a special hello to a few people. First of all, I want to welcome our incoming families and our incoming students. I've met most of you, and I can say two things without reserve. We have a very talented and, importantly, a really nice group of students joining us this year. And secondly, we have a very committed and generous group of parents, many of whom have already offered to help the school in any way possible. And we're really looking forward to having this group of parents, all of you if possible, but certainly the group of parents who have the commitment and time to join our TASIS Parent Association. We are going to have an outstanding group of founding families. I'd also like to welcome our founding faculty members, many of whom are joining us this evening and have done for the last number of weeks. I can tell you that they're all really looking forward to joining us in Portugal and helping launch this outstanding school. And we have some special guests I'd like to welcome this evening. Joining us from Italy, the daughter of our founder, Lynn Eshelman, and her husband, Michael Eshelman, who has been an academic leader at TASIS for many years. They are both on the foundation board, and we are delighted that they could join us this evening. They're in the viewing audience. And it's timely because our special guest tonight is a close friend of the Eshelman family and was a very close friend of our founder, Lynn's mother, Mrs. Fleming. And you've heard me talk about Mrs. Fleming, our amazing founder of TASIS Schools, of course. I did not have the pleasure of knowing her. However, our guest tonight knew her intimately for more than 25 years. He was hired by Mrs. Fleming for his first job in education when he joined the faculty in TASIS Switzerland. And Mrs. Fleming is the reason we are here, and we are dedicating this campus to her honor. Therefore, without further delay, our guest this evening, Mr. Fernando Gonzalez, was raised in Puerto Rico and New York. Born shortly after the Second World War, he is truly an original baby boomer. Fernando attended Princeton University, where he studied information technology. I'm kidding. Fernando attended Harvard University, where he studied design and architecture. That's an inside joke. People that attend Harvard never want to be mentioned that they attended Princeton. Of course, information technology is no friend of Fernando's. However, Fernando has served as the board chair or the chairman of the board for 3 of the 4 TASIS schools. He helped found both TASIS England and TASIS Puerto Rico, which he'll talk a bit about this evening. And he was the impetus for TASIS Portugal. And he's leading our construction project and design, as I mentioned earlier. Now, I must forewarn you, Fernando is very shy. He doesn't like to speak publicly. We'll probably have to coax answers out of him this evening. But first of all, I'd like everyone to welcome Fernando Gonzalez. May I call you Fernando?
Please.
Fernando, thank you for joining us. And we have some questions. Some of them have been submitted, and some of them are just things that I think our viewing audience would love to hear from you. So I'm going to throw a few questions your way. Please talk at length about some of these things that are important to our TASIS community, and certainly the founding families at TASIS Portugal would be very excited to hear. So the first one is, tell us about our iconic founder of the TASIS schools, Mrs. Fleming, who you knew well.
Well, thank you, Keith, and thank you, Amy, and for allowing me to join you this evening in this webinar. I really relish this opportunity. Let me start by saying that one can spend a lifetime looking for a role model, and you're fortunate if you succeed in all the years that you're alive. I was very fortunate to meet Mrs. Fleming just out of university at age 23, and I was inspired, I was motivated. She sent me a contract sight unseen, which was quite daring of her, but I understood very quickly what made her successful, and that is a passion for people, a passion for education, and a passion for beauty. And I think that sums up what I believe we at TASIS try to do. We build communities. We build communities with people, and we want to include not just students and teachers, but parents and families. That gives us strength, and it creates a partnership that can't be beaten. So Mrs. Fleming was not only an inspiration, she was a second mother for me for all the years that I worked. And what was going to be a 1-year leave of absence from Harvard Design School ended up being 47. So that length of time, I learned a lot about what it takes to start a school, to run a school, but more importantly, how to build relationships, how to get the most out of people so that they're contributing to a single purpose. And that's the success of any good school, is making sure everyone understands its mission and that they're working together as a team to make it happen.
Great, thank you, Fernando. And 47 years is a long time to be with an organization. And I think it's worth telling people, Fernando, that you were so talented as a student that you graduated from Harvard at age 6.
I wish. I sometimes feel that age, but you know what? It's the spirit that drives one, and it doesn't matter if you're 6 or 76. And I'm almost at the other end. But I have to say that what has always driven this institution, TASIS, to its success is that we never rest on our laurels. We're always looking to improve and to strengthen what we do well. And TASIS Portugal is that opportunity, is to do all the good things, all the best things we know about what it takes to be a great school and start with that from the beginning. So Mrs. Fleming would have loved Portugal, I know that. She loved beauty, she loved culture, she loved languages, and all of that we find in Portugal. Plus great food and wonderful people. It's that warmth, it's that family feeling, and it reminds me very much of my home country, Puerto Rico. Families are important, traditions are important, and a sense of belonging and being part of something bigger than yourself is important. So at TASIS, and in Portugal in particular, we thrive on that. And to be able to start another school, it's my 6th school with TASIS that I've started, and we've never failed on one, and we're certainly not going to fail on this one. We have had a success record that is enviable. And quite frankly, we wouldn't have started this if we didn't believe we were going to succeed. And everything certainly points in that direction. We are absolutely thrilled with not only the caliber of the families we're attracting, the caliber of the teachers you're hiring, Keith, and more importantly, the sense that we're going to create one of the best schools, if not the best school, in Portugal.
Now, Fernando, I'm getting some messaging from my colleagues that, and I don't want you to panic, but there seems to be someone behind you in your stairs, and I'm worried you might be getting robbed.
Okay.
Or is that a construction person?
Oh, let's hope they're not robbing me, but it could be construction. I'm always building somewhere, so I can't sit for 2 seconds without starting a project.
Now, Fernando, you visited Portugal, it's more than a year ago, and I just wanted to talk a little bit about your visit here and then putting your eyes on this massive building and what went through your mind and how the design concept for this, what's going to be a beautiful school, came to be.
Well, I guess one has to start with saying we like challenges. And there's no question that this Ballura Shopping Center is a challenge. But we divided it up into steps, into phases that will give us what we need in a timely fashion so that the first phase of the development will handle and be able to educate our grades up through grade 7. We certainly see going forward that this school has tremendous opportunity, but we have to deliver from day one. And we have a plan for doing just that. And if we were delayed by the coronavirus or by for any other reason, we have a backup plan that we believe will be successful in getting this school off the ground on September 7th when we planned it. I don't think the foundation would have accepted taking a risk for its reputation of starting a school and not being able to deliver on the date that we said we're opening. So I want to reassure families, faculty, our students, that we're going to be opening on September 7th, and we will be delivering what we say we're delivering. We believe in transparency. We believe in open communication. We believe in all the things that makes for successful communities. So let me assure you that In many ways, everyone says, oh, you don't know Portugal, they make promises they can't keep. Anyone from Puerto Rico knows about promises that can't be kept. The idea of mañana is very, very prevalent in our society. We don't live with that. We live it every day, and we perform every day. So we certainly don't think that this school will have any difficulty, even with the challenges we've had with the coronavirus, with the permits, with everybody saying it can't be done. You know, that's like waving a red flag, like Fernando the Bull here. It's going to happen, believe me.
Thank you, Fernando. Fernando, many of the schools in Portugal are different forms of international or independent schools. They often have owners. Someone that owns the property, owns the school, and often is involved in the day-to-day operations. Can you talk about, first of all, who owns the TASIS schools and about the role of the TASIS Foundation Board?
Sure, that's an important part of our DNA, if you will. Mrs. Fleming, about 15 years before she passed away, she really wanted to put together a structure that would perpetuate the schools. And she very generously donated the schools and its properties and its goodwill, the name, to the TASIS Foundation, which is a nonprofit foundation based in Switzerland. Now the purpose and the bylaws of the foundation is purely to perpetuate the TASIS schools and to start new ventures based on Mrs. Fleming's vision, which is why Portugal came to reality. I have no doubts that in today's world, there's always need for education. Mrs. Fleming liked to say that civilization was a race between education and catastrophe. You need to have education. That's our single most important and best investment we can make in our children. We believe that fervently. We feel that we are making a difference in our students' lives every day. And we don't want to just educate them. We want to make them leaders. We want to make them entrepreneurs. We want to make them giving people who will develop values and continue to live our mission. Once they finish with us, they're always part of our family.
Fernando, maybe you can, and without giving names, obviously, who comprises the foundation board?
Well, the foundation board is a very interesting group. Half of us are educators. We have been born and educators or headmasters. That's an important part of any good board for a school. And I think that's quite often what's lacking in many boards, the lack of educational experience and knowledge. We have right now 4 headmasters, either existing or past headmasters. We have the son and the daughter of Mrs. Fleming, Tom Fleming and Lynn Fleming, and of course Michael Eschman, who's been our curriculum coordinator for the TASIS Foundation for many, many years. We also have what I believe are the next generation of leaders in our foundation. And I think that's important. The continuity, the legacy we're leaving has to be continued. You can't just sort of leave it when we all pass away. It has to be prepared for the groundwork for the next generation to follow. So I think that's an important part of a successful foundation. The foundation's role really is to appoint and make sure that the school boards are doing its job, are holding the senior leadership team accountable to make sure that the bylaws of the foundation are being adhered to. And I think that's an important aspect. It gives you the hands-on management and governance on the ground that the school boards do, but it gives you an overview and it keeps the schools consistent with a similar mission and similar beliefs. And that's critical, because otherwise each school will grow and change into something different just by virtue of where they're located and by the personalities that are running those schools. So the foundation's role is to make sure that there is continuity, there's consistency, and above all, that we are perpetuating our schools in the way Mrs. Fleming's vision was first created when she came to Switzerland in 1955.
Thank you, Fernando. I've obviously had the pleasure to meet the foundation board members on more than one occasion, and they're a pretty exceptional group of people. True or false? the foundation board members are volunteers?
Yes, they're volunteers. Sometimes they're recruited volunteers. I think one has to have a passion for education to serve on a board and be successful. That's got to be your guiding principle, that you're there to do everything you can to make the school succeed. It's not about being financially successful, although that's important. It's about creating the kind of school that we believe will educate our students in the best way possible. And Mrs. Fleming knew all her students. She knew all her teachers. She was quite an extraordinary person. And Lynn sort of follows in those footsteps. And those of us who've been with the school for as long as we have, we grew up with that role model, with that idea that the only way you can be successful is to not only have the inspiration, but to work hard and fulfill the goals of our mission. And I think everyone working together is what achieves success. It starts with the staff, secretarial, gardening staff, maintenance, cooking, and goes right up through to the headmaster and ultimately to the governance. They've got to be on the same page and they got to be sharing the same mission. Otherwise, you end up with a lot of difficulties because the schools have to be run as a team. And if the governance gets too involved in the day-to-day operation, that's not good. By the same token, if we totally do not follow through on what we believe our chores are and making sure that the schools are successful, then we're not doing our job. So it's that balance between finding a governance structure that's supportive, that makes sure you have everything you need to succeed, but also holds you accountable and makes sure that you're doing the very best on behalf of the school. Because you're the only employee each board has, and you're our delegated CEO of the school. And we have to trust and have confidence in your ability to run the school, but we also have to be able to ask the right questions, and those hard questions when they do come up. But we have to do this as a team.
Thank you, Fernando. I wish you'd have mentioned some of that before you hired me, but I appreciate you telling me now. All right, you've answered a bunch of great questions for us. I think that will put people's minds at ease. Now, the one part that I've talked about and you've already mentioned, but you might just want to talk a little bit more about because it's our most frequent question. And I know today you spent a couple hours, as you do every Thursday, in the construction site meeting where you talk about the project without going into a lot of detail because, again, I've already spoken to it, but can you give some reassurance about today's meeting because I think it was particularly positive?
Sure. Just to say, one of the challenges has been trying to manage this project from abroad. We meet every week, but I also am in touch with our project manager and our consultants more than 2 or 3 times a week. So I'm, if not in daily contact, in almost every other day. I hope to be back in Portugal by the middle of June, if the borders open. I was spending up to 2 weeks every month in Portugal, and I thought that was very helpful because I could see the hands-on role that it needed to be played. But we are fortunate to have a very good contractor. We're very fortunate to have a very experienced project manager, and we have a good team. So I have to trust and have confidence in the job they're doing. But I have to ask those hard questions. Are we on schedule? Are we on time? Are we getting the quality we're looking for? Are we also managing the budget in a responsible way? And as challenging as it is from a distance, you know, we've all learned through virtual and remote learning here that it's a new world we're working in, but we have to adjust to it. And I'm very pleased with where we are. Today was probably one of their more encouraging meetings because we not only are on schedule, we are actually, with the situation, we have moved leaps and bounds. And I want to thank one of our parents, by the way, Rita de Castro Neto, who has been outstanding. Her son will be a student of ours in the fall. She's been invaluable with her connections with the Sintra municipality and the mayor. That has made it possible for us to move very quickly through this whole very complicated permit process, from change of use to construction to occupation to every time I turn, there's another permit we need. But the facts are that this is required. This is by law. We have to fulfill those requirements. And we've been very fortunate. We've had the right level of support and consulting that we needed to get the job done. But today we started our external work. That's huge. We're taking the frame down. We have found some challenges, as I call them, not problems, challenges. None of the walls line up, and that's why we had to take the panels off to assess the situation. We have come up with a solution to even and align all those walls, and that's going to add some time to the project. But we've got a solution, we've got an answer, and I was very encouraged that we're going to move forward with that. Everything, as far as I can see, is on schedule. If we are delayed for any reason, we have a backup plan. We have another building that we've looked at and feel very comfortable with if that is needed. We also have the possibility of using temporary buildings if not all of the campus is ready, but I'm still convinced we are on schedule and we will get there. I'm not going to have the last school I start for TASIS not start on time. Believe me, that is absolutely a commitment. I made that to the foundation, and I won't be able to sleep well until I know that that school is on schedule and open as we've planned.
Great, thank you, Fernando. I think it's time to turn to our viewing audience. They've got some burning questions, no doubt, so I'll turn this back over to Amy Gruber to curate the questions. And just to remind people, the questions can be about anything. We only have Fernando here for the next 30 minutes, so if you have questions particular to our board or that Fernando can answer, then please do so, but I'm happy to answer questions as well.
Terrific. Thank you, Keith. We have one viewer, Fernando, who said that she would love to hear a little bit about your personal and professional journey.
Okay. I'm a mixed bag. I can't seem to find one thing that I'm not interested in, or in other words, I love everything I do. I love education. I love reaching out and making a difference in students' lives, our children's lives. I think that keeps us young. That's a huge, huge asset. I learned that from Mrs. Fleming very early on, that her spirit and her energy was contagious. And what I love most about her is that she made you think it was your idea. You know, she had a way of making everyone feel connected and involved and part of creating this very special school or this very special goal that she had. And somehow she had that charm. She could walk into a room and make everyone feel that they're the most important person in that room for the 10 seconds that she spoke to them. And I think together, what I've found always exciting about working for TASIS, and I don't see it as working, I see it as building part of the legend that Mrs. Fleming has set for ourselves. I never thought I'd be in Europe for 47 years. I came on the 1-year leave of absence, as I said, and what kept me here was the challenges, the exciting dimensions that she brought every day. There wasn't a day that there wasn't some new idea that was sprouting out of her head. I once asked her, Mrs. Fleming, with all the things you've achieved in life, are there any things you regret? Any things you wish, you know, you hadn't? She says, Fernando, I never regret anything I did. I only regret the things I didn't do. I think that sums it up for me. It's a great philosophy in life, and no matter what age, I don't know if I'll ever retire, but I love architecture. I've restored a hamlet in the south of France. I've probably restored 50 or 60 buildings in my lifetime. I'm not stopping. I mean, as I say, if I'm here for 2 weeks, I'll find a project to get going. But I love the idea of creating something that everybody is part of and helps create. You, Amy, and Keith, and Andrea, and the staff who are coming, are becoming part of a very special family. And I think you will find this extraordinary idea that together we can be really special. We can create some things that you can't do as individuals. So I guess that's really what drives me. It's this sense that, and I love teaching. I'm still, in the summers, I teach architecture in the south of France. So to me, teaching is like breathing. You learn as much as you teach. I always said this to my students. And I think that's the attitude we should all have as educators. We are always learning. The day we stop learning is the day we stop being educators.
Amy, I have a follow-up for Fernando because I know that Fernando went to Harvard as a two-sport athlete, and I also know that he grew up in part in upstate New York. So you were a hockey player, from Puerto Rico. And certainly true to the rumor, Fernando, that you used to tell people you were Canadian.
Well, we were about 20 minutes away from Canada. I'll tell you a funny story about that. We grew up in upstate New York, a little town called Saranac Lake, and we probably learned to skate before we learned to walk. But my brother, George, who went to Harvard as well, was the only Puerto Rican hockey player ever in the history of the game. It's like the Jamaican bobsled team, you know. How do you learn to skate in Puerto Rico? Well, the story went by the trainer at Andover, where we both went to school. He said, my brother used to take the ice cream out of the ice cream plant, the freezer, and freeze over, and that's how he learned to skate. Of course, the matter is, if you put ice cream out for 10 minutes, 5 minutes in Puerto Rico, you've got liquid. So he learned to skate in upstate New York. Sports have always been an important part of my life. I think there's a great lesson to be learned in sports. It's about teamwork. It's about competing. It's about winning. But it's even more about losing gracefully and learning how to take loss as part of the learning process. I think we learn more from our losses and our failures than we do from our wins. So I think sports is a great opportunity to learn, and I think that's probably what drove me and makes me competitive. I don't like losing, as you know, Keith, but I also don't like making it the be-all and end-all. I believe in sports as a recreational and a healthy pastime. It's not just about winning and losing, it's about participating. And that's how our sports programs at TASIS are. It's not just about wins and loss columns, it's about getting everybody to participate.
Well, I can reassure folks that Fernando and I golfed together just recently, in fact, and he was a truly gracious loser.
Absolutely. You learn the hard way.
All right, I better take it away from you two. This could continue for a while. The mother of two wonderful young men who've enrolled in grades 4 and 7 writes, we saw the visuals for the internal rooms of the school, which look great. So first of all, thank you for designing such a great place. Could you reassure us that the noise levels within each area, especially within the classrooms and communal areas, will not be a nuisance given the chosen materials such as glass and wood? Great question.
Well, that is a great question. And let me just preface everything by saying I was very fortunate to have our master plan architect, David Marinek, who's designed almost all of our campuses, including Puerto Rico, from a distance, but very much an inspiration. And he is the epitome of the classical architect. He knows how you can take a modern contemporary shopping center and make it a very traditional Portuguese manor house and mansion. So the challenges were there. When I asked him to come down and look at it, he said, "You're asking for the impossible." I said, "Yes." And Mr. Summey used to say, "That only takes another day." And he did it in 2 days. So David was instrumental in creating this beautiful design that we're now following. That's our master plan. And I hope that as we develop not just the beauty of it, we have the practical sides of these buildings in mind as well. And acoustics is a big one. We're putting in materials that are very much acoustical in their nature. In fact, today we were talking about the noise of our HVAC system and how can we minimize that. And I approved a new baffle system that will reduce the noise of the air conditioning units. So yes, we will have construction going on, but we are building very, very insulated walls between the construction for phase 2. We're not going to stop constructing really, because we are just completing phase 1, which is about 3,000 square feet, 3,000 square meters. And we'll start phase 2 as soon as we feel we're ready and we have the permits. But during that time, we're going to put up partitions of acoustical walls that will separate the noise from the work being done. As you probably know, there's also the racetrack just nearby, the Autodrome, which is probably the worst noise. And we are replacing the tents that are now part of the structure. If you look at the Ballura Shopping Center, you have these very lightweight tent structures. It's almost like a three-ring circus, and quite frankly, we don't think that's a good motif for our school. So we're starting by eliminating the first tent, which is the phase 1 development, and putting in a insulated canopy. I should say conservatory, if you will, because we believe that the sound and the light and the beauty all are part of the same thing. It's all part of the same structure. So we're going to be doing some pretty fundamental changes to that building, which will make it both practical and beautiful. But I mean, not just acoustical, but I think it's got to do all kinds of things. That building has to serve the needs of our students and our faculty to do the best job they can in the classroom. And that's exciting. It's starting something from scratch. Very often the TASIS schools have started in buildings that have already existed, and we have to transform them. They're usually historical buildings. We've had to transform them into modern school buildings. And we've been successful at that, but this is the first time where we've really taken an existing modern structure and tried to convert it into a TASIS-style campus. That's really exciting for me, and I'm sure we will succeed, but I think what you will see will be a complete transformation and will reflect what we believe is the beauty, and creating not just beauty, it's about creating an environment which is conducive to learning. It is all about learning. And here in Puerto Rico, the campus I design is built around the idea of a monastery. If you think of a monastery and the cloisters and how beautifully quiet and peaceful they are and secure, that theme should be in all of our schools. So that's why beauty is so critical to the success of our schools.
Thank you, Fernando. That was a great answer. And we have questions covering a number of topics. And here's one from Jorge. I know you can't answer for Portugal yet, but can you comment on staff turnover, academic as well as non-academic, in other TASIS locations? Great question.
Well, one of our strengths is continuity, and without a solid core of top-notch mentor teachers and long-term faculty, you will not succeed as a school. I mean, we talk about campuses and the importance of beauty and all of that, but ultimately, the difference is what goes on in the classroom, and it's down to the teachers. And if you don't have the best teachers and you don't keep them happy and keep them for a long time, I think you're going to be constantly struggling to deliver the kind of education we want to deliver. So we probably are, have the longest serving faculty in many of our schools. In most international schools, there is turnover. Let's not belittle that. You probably can expect anywhere from a 15 to 20% turnover on average, and sometimes more. And certain schools, you have much more than that. I believe that a certain amount of turnover is healthy, but I don't want to keep that. I don't want to make that more than 10 to 15%. That's the average turnover that we have in our schools. And these are boarding schools, the ones in England and Switzerland, as well as day schools. The school in Puerto Rico, if we have a turnover of more than 2 or 3 faculty every year, I'd be surprised. And it's mostly because they're leaving to go back to the States. It's not because they're not happy teaching in our schools. It's because their family plans have changed and they've moved back to their home.
Thank you, Fernando. The mother of an enrolled student writes, and this might be a Keith question also, online learning in one form or another may be here to stay. I agree. How can the school maintain the vision of the founder while ensuring excellence in learning, following the curriculum in a dynamic and interactive, albeit distant way, and helping young children feel connected to the school and the teachers?
I'll comment a bit on that, and then Fernando probably wants to say a few words as well. Teaching is both an art and a science, right? And the science is where we do a lot of our development. So we study, we have professional learning communities, we learn our craft, we learn technology. So all that goes into the science part. I feel very comfortable that our faculty, A, are already prepared, and B, will certainly be very well prepared by September once we've had a chance to gather as a community. But the art of teaching is about relationships. There's a saying, no one wants to know, no one cares what you know unless they know that you care. And our teachers I've met with them many, many times, and I only hired people that have a deep care, both for teaching, but also for successful young people. No teacher told me I just like to teach the brightest students, or nobody told me that they weren't interested in differentiating their lessons and making sure that students who needed support in that particular area didn't get it. Quite the opposite. I hired people that really care about elevating the achievements of all students. And so the art part, when you deliver the art of teaching remotely, it is particularly challenging because the relationship is much more difficult, just like tonight's webinar. The relationship that we have with the people who are out in the audience is much more challenging than if they're sitting in front of you. But one of the things we've maintained, and I know the other TASIS schools are doing this, is making sure that there is contact with each teacher, with each student every day. And so that's a really important thing. The other part of it, and again, they've done this in Switzerland quite well, they've polled parents, they've asked parents for feedback on a regular basis. How's this working for you and your families? Tell us how we're doing. Tell us what we could be doing more of and less of. And that feedback, that immediate feedback to teachers has helped them to modify their lessons, modify their homework, making themselves available through a variety of mediums or media to work closely with students who need extra support. And I don't even want to imagine September 7th and not seeing all the bright, shining faces of our new students and our founding families. But obviously, if that is a reality, we'll be well prepared for it.
Let me just add to that. Can I add to that, Keith? If I may. I think one of the advantages of being a TASIS school is that we're going to be able to benefit from what our existing schools in Switzerland, England, and Puerto Rico are doing. We're learning, we're improving delivery of e-learning, and I think as it continues, and if it continues, we're going to be better at it every step of the way. And I think, so TASIS Portugal, and I want to emphasize this, it's not really a new school, it's a new campus. But we're borrowing and we're able to benefit from all the experience and all the know-how that we now have in our other schools. So that's a huge advantage. And quite frankly, I think it's something that is uniquely special about TASIS, is that we started schools based on a very clear set of guidelines that Mrs. Fleming set up and believed in, and we all have followed. And it's through the missions, it's through our strategic planning goals, it's through everything that goes into making a great school. And e-learning is just the next step in our learning process. We need to make that effective. We need to make it, if it continues especially, we need to refine it and make it even better. So we're not starting from scratch. We're starting already with a huge body of information and knowledge and experience to piggyback on. So I think that's a huge difference from what most schools starting in Portugal would find.
Can I just ask you also on that same theme? I know that you were the chairman of the board in England, and so you know that school intimately. You know the head of school there. I know you don't like him as much as you like me, but with all that said, can you talk a little bit about what they're doing? Because they kept some students who were boarders. They kept them on campus because those students couldn't return home.
Yeah, it wasn't by choice. We wanted to get them home, and in fact, one group of 12 of them went all the way to the airport and were finally turned back at 3 in the morning. So what choice did we have? I mean, what would you do? You have to have them come back. We have had them basically on campus for the last 2 months. They may be for another month. And altogether, and we even had one alumna come back and stay with us because she couldn't get home. So I think we have to understand that when our students are in a situation which is beyond their control, there's no fault of their own or the parents, the airport just closed down from one day to the next without our knowledge. And so, yeah, we've had them there. They've done very well. We've been very fortunate. It's a great bunch of kids. And we've had, if you will, a practice run on how to quarantine kids on campus. It's not what we would have liked, but we've had it and it's worked very well. They feel that the food's the best it's ever been. Well, when you're feeding a school of 17 kids, a little different from feeding a school of 670 kids. So they've got some advantages. And as soon as the borders open, obviously they'll go home. But we've generated a lot of goodwill. Our families have been incredibly appreciative of that we've bent over backwards. We've allowed them and supported them through this period of time, which has been challenging for sure.
Thank you, Fernando. And I do think that's a hallmark of TASIS schools. Keith and I wanted to work for TASIS specifically. We didn't leave our home in Canada and our jobs and that life just to go have a different experience. We wanted to work for TASIS, and I get that all the time from families who write. And you know, there's a gentleman in California saying, we're moving to Portugal. I attended summer camps at TASIS in the 80s and knew Mrs. Fleming. You know, when we saw TASIS school, that was for us. So I mean, everything you say really rings true from my personal experience. And the ideal person to answer this question from Bruno. From your point of view, Fernando, which are the key things that sets TASIS apart from other international schools?
That's a great question. Is Bruno a student or a parent?
He is a father of 2 enrolled students.
Okay. Well, I'll answer it 2 ways. One, as a parent. I am a parent, I should say, who had 2 children grow up at TASIS England. They started at pre-kindergarten, went right through the 12th grade. And from my experience as a parent, what has always made me feel they got a special education was their ability to relate and feel comfortable in any culture in any part of the world, because of the friends they made, because of the caliber of the students they associated with. I think we have to remember the school is only as good as its students and its teachers. And if we don't have the best students and the best teachers, then we're going to fall short. We can do the best job we possibly can, but if they're not able or willing or motivated, we're going to struggle. And what I found is that my kids grew up with great kids, and I think they were great role models for each other, that you learn from each other as much as you learn from your teachers. And I think it wasn't nerdy to be a good student. It wasn't uncomfortable to be a first-rate athlete, as one of my kids was, or a first-rate computer whiz, as my other son was, or a wonderful musician. You know, everybody finds a place where they can thrive, and that's, to me, the key to good education. You want to deliver to a wide range of kids the best possible education, and whatever their strengths, we want to nurture them and bring it out of them. So I think that's one of the distinctive features. As a teacher and as an educator, I think what I appreciated most was the feeling of community, that everyone was part of something really special, that they felt they could contribute, that there were leadership opportunities, that there were community service opportunities, that we want to strengthen our students' values and have them leave TASIS feeling they've been part of a really special community that they're going to sort of live with for the rest of their lives. We're not just educating them in the classroom, we're educating them in the class, on trips, sports, on activities, you know, you name it. It's an opportunity to teach kids in so many different ways that I think it's just unparalleled, quite frankly. That's what kept me at TASIS, I have to say, all these years. It's seeing these children respond to that kind of a setting. And of course, you know, when you see your kids and then you see your grandchildren grow up with those same values, you say, wow, it's like dropping a pebble in the water. You know, the ripples just go on and on and on. So to me, that's what's special as a parent and as a teacher.
Thank you, Fernando. And we're ping-ponging back and forth between sort of these larger philosophical questions about community and some really specifics about the building. So 2 related questions. One is, I understand the externals of the building will be completed after school is open. Won't that be disruptive? And 2, other TASIS schools have outstanding outdoor facilities. How are the constraints of this site going to influence the traditional school culture, playing fields, etc.?
Well, there are 2 questions here. One of them is we're not going to complete the exterior after school starts. There is one part of the building that is what is the Cinema City. We call it Building C because as you face the front of it, it's the building to the right. That's where the cinema complex is. To the rear, there are some windows that will go in, which are fake windows. They're painted on, and they're not real windows because cinemas don't want windows. But it's part of our building in a sense. So that's the section that won't get completed before September 7th. And by the way, the completion date for that is the 18th of September. So that's the worst case scenario as we hear it today. We're hoping we'll finish it all by the 7th. And so far, so good. We're on target. The second question, with outdoors facilities, we're looking, and we have several options we're pursuing. And in fact, we're looking at sports fields, we're looking at outdoor playgrounds, we're looking at artificial turf, we're looking at a number of options, all of which will be part of our campus. We emphasize the sports program, outdoor. You got to live a happy, healthy life physically as well as mentally, and so sports is an integral part of our programs. And we will have sports facilities, and we will, in the short term, rent if needed, but create them as we speak. And we're looking at 3 outdoor playgrounds right now that we're creating, all to the rear of the building. We're looking at an adjacent playing field that we're looking to rent and possibly purchase long term, but right now rent, that will be converted into a playing field. We're looking longer term at fields a little further away that we're hoping still to be within walking distance, but in the meantime, we're negotiating and we're working. We feel this is an important part of the campus, so don't think of this campus as just a shopping center. It is the building that has to be supported and surrounded by other facilities, outdoor facilities, and we're definitely working on that, and we will have that available very, very soon. I think you've seen some 3D drawings and of the playgrounds. Is that correct? That we have shown them? Well, we're looking at playing fields in addition to that, and that's still in progress, and we are very encouraged at this stage, and probably within the next few weeks we'll be able to announce what we're going ahead with.
Thank you, Fernando. The father, Joao, of one of our very first enrolled students, writes that it's very encouraging to find a school that talks about community, student success holistically, and making society better. And he wants to know, how are the teachers trained on the, quote, TASIS way, unquote, if there is such a culture commonality? And are there exchanges of knowledge and experiences between the different TASIS schools?
I think that's a question Keith should address, because it comes down to hiring the right people, and I'll let Keith talk about that. But let me give you the background as to who we look for and why we hire the teachers we hire. We're looking for teachers who are very knowledgeable and passionate about their subject matter. That's got to be a starter. But there's also a values quotient that has to do with the role models they will play in areas, not just in the classroom, but outside the classroom. You probably don't know the idea of the triple threat, but in boarding schools, independent schools, you have teachers who are coaches, and you have coaches who also live in dormitories. So you get to know your students in many, many different ways. Now, in a day school, of course, you can't have a boarding, but we expect our teachers to be all involved with our activities program, our after-school activities program. We expect them to be involved with trips. With everything we do, they're part of that program, and they would not be applying or being hired if they didn't believe in that ethos. That's critical, because it's not just a teacher in the classroom that we're looking for. We're looking for the full impact that this teacher or this grown-up can have on their students. So Keith, you might want to add to that.
Thanks, Fernando. That was well said. I'll only add a few things. I talked about this last week, actually. I talked about the 3 things I was looking for in a teacher. The first one was somebody who's a professional and knows their craft. The second was somebody who's committed to the success, purely committed to the success of young people. putting the success of young people even before their own needs. I talked quite a bit about that last week. But the third one was hiring people that I really believed I would want my own children to be educated by. And those are all really important. The two main jobs of a head of school, really, job number one, hire the best people. And I've spent the majority of the last 9 months doing exactly that. Countless hours of meeting people, re-meeting people, holding interviews, holding just conversations over coffee to get to know the kind of people that are going to be part of this community. And the second job of a head of school is to develop the culture of the school. And that's an ongoing, everyday job, working one-on-one, working in large groups, setting expectations, working with people who, for whatever reason, are having challenges meeting those expectations, encouraging people who are going well above and beyond, but also building that culture in a community. I came from my past work. I was running a campus at a university, and when I arrived there, the culture was not one of success, it was not one of support. And it took a long, long time to turn that ship and create the kind of culture that I would be proud of, and my own son actually attended that university. So I was really proud to have had the opportunity to work with people to change the culture. We get an opportunity here that's once in a lifetime for me, is to open a new school with new people who all have the same vision, because I painted that vision with them. They told me what their aspirations were, and when those things collided, we knew we were going to be a good match for one another. And so developing the culture of the school is going to be the most fun, maybe challenging, but the most interesting part of the work I do, and I'm really looking forward to it.
Two questions, follow-up for Keith. How many faculty did you interview to hire the 30 faculty you now have?
I interviewed more than 100 faculty. I interviewed most of our own faculty that we hired more than once, some cases 3 or 4 times. And I had approximately 400 applicants for these few positions. And I've met some really great people that I just, for whatever reason, couldn't hire this year, but they're still in our reservoir and our pool of potential applicants for the future, because of course next year we'll be hiring another 20 teachers.
Yeah. So that's one point. You've either had interviews or have had applications from over 400 teachers. That's pretty good. If you're only picking 30 of those, you've been pretty selective. So that's one indicator. The other one I'd like to add, and this idea of how do we inculcate this ethos or culture that we have. I hope that people have read or have seen the Paideia. Is that something that we give out to our prospective families? Certainly our teachers get it.
That's a good point.
Sorry?
I was going to say that's a good point. On our website under employment, there are a list of cautions before you apply to be a teacher at TASIS school, and it lists the cautions and the things you should expect. And it finishes with, if this does not resonate with you, please do not apply. And so all the teachers who applied read that and said, and including the TASIS Paideia, and said, yeah, this is the kind of school I want to be part of.
And that either inspires our teachers or turns them off. If we inspire them, they're the right choice. And that's important, because that's how you set the culture from the get-go. It's hard to bring someone in under very different pretenses and different expectations and then try to change them. We've got to start, and this is the opportunity we have, by starting from scratch.
Thank you.
The last thing I'll say, Amy, and I apologize because I know the hour is getting late, but I told people very clearly, I had one goal, was to create the best school in the country. And I said, if you want to be part of that, this is your time. And overwhelmingly, the people that applied and the people that joined us obviously all said, I want to be part of this, please.
Thank you. And we have a student attending who has a specific question, and he wants to know, how big are the play areas? When we open school in September, how big are each of those play areas?
Let me just tell you a little story. I used to have donuts with the headmaster. I used to bring the younger children over from the other side of campus at TASIS England, and I used to have them come and I let them ask questions. And one of the questions, I think he was a fourth grader, so what, he would have been 7. 8, he said, "How do I get to be the big boss?" And I thought that was great. It's gutsy for a student to ask that. So our spaces are going to be, what we have are 3 different play areas for the younger children. It's going to be the Early Childhood Center, which is connected directly to their multi-purpose space. In terms of size, I can't give you off the top of my head, but we're probably talking about a small playground. But we're having it, I now know, as an outside classroom as well. So we have an outdoor space with an amphitheater type of seating so that they can have an outdoor class. We have another playground that will be for the middle-aged children, probably from ages 6, 7 to age 8 or 9. And that will be, I'm going to guess, about 30 to 40 meters wide by about 40 to 50 meters long. That's roughly the size we're looking at. We also have another area that is now presently being used as our construction site, and that's the biggest of the 3 areas, and that will be used initially while we're not doing construction, and that's probably the biggest. That might be 60 or 60 meters long and about 40 meters wide. And we're looking at another space, but I can't yet say what it is, because if I start saying that, I think I'll get some people upset. But we're looking at other areas as well as those 3.
And as soon as we are allowed to welcome visitors on campus again, I encourage this young man and all of our students to call the admissions office and schedule a time to come by so you can see in person. Keith's been giving me the high sign that we are out of time, and I apologize to the people whose questions we did not have an opportunity to answer. The time always goes very quickly when we're with the chairman of our board, who's just been, and I'm not being just a suck up here, who's always been a wonderful inspiration to us. Nothing phases him. The biggest problem, he is always incredibly gracious and a great leader for us to model ourselves under. So thank you very much, Fernando.
Thank you, Amy. And let me tell you, I picked the best choices I made after picking Portugal as a site for our school was to pick Amy and Keith. They have been outstanding, and I have no doubt that we have the right leadership, and a great school needs great leadership. So thank you to 2 of you. You have thrown yourself in at the deep end, and you've been willing and patient and able to handle all the different balls in the air that you've got to have. A new school is always full of surprises, but the more surprises we can avoid and handle and put in place, the better we're going to be for when school starts. I think it's great that our teachers are arriving a month ahead. Talk about orientation. Most schools only have a 1-week orientation before school starts. So to have 4 weeks is really good. That's extraordinary. So thank you. And thank you for letting me join you this evening. I've thoroughly enjoyed it.
Fernando, it's been my extreme pleasure to have you join us tonight. I knew when you were the invited guest that I would have to talk a lot less, so that's been fabulous for me. But seriously, I want to just say, being the head here has been an extreme experience for me, extremely pleasurable experience, because I get to work with amazing people, including our board, who I have great respect for. But your inspiration, your creativity, your intelligence, your positive spirit have really buoyed our spirits in times when we wondered if we were going to get things on track or whether we were going to be able to deal with some of the ambiguity that surrounds the project. And I just want to thank you for that. You've been a tremendous inspiration and role model for us. And I couldn't imagine doing this without your help. And so I have one question for you, Fernando, because you brought it up. I'm just going to say something and then you tell me, but Keith Chiquin, great head of school or greatest head of school ever? Which just, and you know, you want to pause on that.
The jury is still out. Listen, you can only be the greatest headmaster after you become a school that's operational. Let's leave that till next year. And then you can ask that question.
Anyway, I was kidding, of course, Fernando. Thank you.
I'll let you keep beating me in golf, as that makes you feel better. That's all right.
It keeps me, it allows me to buy a beer afterwards. All right, so next week we have the pleasure of Gina Anderson, who will be our core knowledge coordinator. and her job is to mentor faculty in this curriculum. She's got lots of experience, and it ties into a question earlier because Gina was a member of the faculty in Tassa, Switzerland for many years, and actually comes recommended from one of our visiting guests from Italy, Lynn Eshelman. So thank you for that. And also joining Gina will be Zoe Zarabi, who is our Singapore math specialist. She will be coordinating the instruction and support for our teachers who will be teaching the Singapore math pedagogy. She's been doing that for many, many years. She's joining us from Malaysia via a number of stops in England and New Zealand. And so we're really excited to have both of them on our faculty and working with our teachers to support them. And, you know, recently we had a guest here. His name is Dr. Nuno Crato, who is he's a lecturer at the University of Lisbon, but also he's a friend of the school, and he's a friend of the person who created our curriculum, E.D. Hirsch Jr. They crossed paths about 20 or 30 years ago in New York, and Nuno Crato has been really supportive to our school, but he says it all starts with curriculum. And so we're really excited that we have a curriculum that is outstanding. It's unique. I don't think any other school is offering the curricula that we are offering. And so to do that right, we need experts, and we've hired them. So we're really looking forward to having both Gina and Zoe next week. Please join us. And thank you for joining us this evening. Thank you, Fernando. Thank you, Amy. Have a great evening, everyone.